Yuck. It's a teeny. Kothetty Sok. My name is Kothetty. It's so good to see you. I'm talking to you from the beautiful Liard First Nations traditional territory here in Watson Lake, Yukon, where the First Nation School Board is hosting a rural experiential model. I have the privilege and honor of being the director of the First Nation School Board and to share a little bit about our story. The school board is newly established in a nonprofit organization serving 11 of the most rural and remote communities in the territory. We manage and operate public schools, and we're firmly rooted in Yukon First Nations worldviews. The First Nation School Board was established as a calls to action after a second scathing Auditor General's report in 2019, where the Yukon government was found to make no progress on meeting the needs of Indigenous and rural students, as well as like the great majority of other learners. And so at this very hard time, the Chiefs Committee on Education was reinstated, and it is made up of 14 Yukon First Nations, and they came together to see what could be done right away, not another generation that this is happening to. And so I have to say that the local wisdom on how to educate our children best has always existed within our people and within our communities. In Yukon, the majority of our nations are self-governing modern treaties, and so we don't have reserves in the Yukon, and we do have the legal ability to like draw down governing authorities and services, everything from justice to lands to resources and including education. And drawing down takes a really long time. I think people have told me about 10 years or so, and then you'd be fully responsible for education in the building. And so we needed something fast, something that our children that are in school, how can we make a difference? And so the First Nation School Board was established with an existing territorial law. So within the Yukon's Education Act, we're actually legislated by BC. And so we follow BC curriculum. And that's where we get where we got the authority to be able to have the First Nation School Board. So in the very first year, we were proud that 8 of the 24 schools were voted in to join the First Nation School Board, and then a year after, 3 more. So we now have 11 schools that we have the honor and privilege of co-governing. And when I want to talk a little bit about co-governing. So co-governing for us includes equal partnership on school management, all the way from setting calendars, dates, the budget, we know that's important. The hiring of staff, we don't do that without our Yukon First Nations partners from that traditional territory. School growth plans, locally developed curricula, and of course, school culture and any policies or procedures that the community feels need to be changed or tweaked or created within their community. And so this is all done through legal agreements with the nations to establish local bodies called community committees, which are replacing school councils. And so what we're doing is we're putting Yukon First Nations citizens in the driver's seat of their schools. And now we are seeing how different education can look here in the Yukon and how successful our learners can be. I'm really excited to share this example because tomorrow, in one of our most northern communities, Old Crow, on the traditional territory of the Vuntut First Nations, a group of learners are setting off on a 10-day trip. And I was on this trip last year. It was life-changing. Um, so what they're going to do is they're going to skidoo from Old Crow over which is a fly-in only community, and they will cross over the Richardson Mountains by skidoo, following an ancestral trail called the Dagutai, and it's between Old Crow and Fort McPherson, in Northwest Territories. And it's another Gwich'in community, so they would travel back and forth. And so this is the second year that the First Nation School Board has embarked on this culturally meaningful trip that embraces Vuntut Gwich'in ways and their worldview and really emulates and honors holding up land as pedagogy. And so trips like these are important initiatives and help showcase our goal of fully integrating culture within instruction, curriculum, assessment, learning spaces, um, for the schools and students learning in our traditional territories. We no longer want to see Yukon First Nations culture as like a segregated subject, as just like a culture days, which are great. We want to see them fully integrated. And our land tells stories and teaches science. There's numeracy and geometry in our drums. Our worldview circles around our learners, establishing pride, a sense of belonging, confidence integral to growing and developing skills. And it is working. After only 1 year of our literacy plan, our learners' standardized test results are up 14 standard scores. This is the first time in over 30 years Yukon students' scores have increased in literacy. I have another cool example of co-governance. So Nell and the Bessie John School in Beaver Creek, one of our smallest and another remote school located on the traditional territory of the White River First Nations, right on the western border of Yukon and Alaska. And so together we're working with the administration and the nation to change their school calendar. And so our school calendars look different. And so this community, um, now their school year is all year round. They have the same amount of instructional time, but they go to school all year round. Their summer break is only like a month, but they go to school for like 4 weeks, get a week off. Go to school for 4 weeks, get a week off. They've also strategically taken time off at their um, and moose harvesting season, as well as their fish harvesting season, as well as like muskrat, which is like a lot of families are enjoying that right now. And so really the calendar is not um enforced on the community. The community is empowered to decide how their school day looks, and they're able to meet those curricular objectives laid out by the government or the instructional time. And so what we've heard from teachers and community member is that their stress levels have gone down, that like that how you kind of lose things. Sometimes teacher talk about that over like a big 3-month summer holidays, that it just feels healthier and people are more connected, and they're not having absences when beautiful hunting and harvesting seasons are happening with the First Nations. And so it's been a really beautiful process in that community, to show how they could solve any kind of calendar issues with their school, like a simple change, but man, was it mind blowing. I'm really excited to share this next one because it's on the traditional territory of the Champagne-Ajac, which I'm a proud member, in the community of Duckwakutta or Haines Junction. So we had two educators develop a phenomenal food sovereignty course. We had one fluent speaker and one kind of like Western amazing science teacher, who specializes in those types of courses. And so they're doing things from two world views in the classroom all the time. And so this was jam-packed experiential curriculum. And some of the amazing programs they did in that half a year was they were able to go on a moose hunt by canoe in the Kluane National Park. They spent time on a local trap line and also got to visit and spend a week at a local farm and see how food is harvested in a farm setting. And so this really combines local, historical, scientific knowledge and an experiential approach to develop a cohesive and connective study of the food system and community health from various worldviews and ways. Um, and so it spans diverse curricular competencies, including economics, transportation, First Nations empowerment, ecological studies, climate change, food security. And so we're really proud to say that most high school students get 4 credits, like, in their semester traditionally, and so these guys were highly academic and were able to get 5 school credits. Um, and then one other thing that we saw when we were talking to the learners and looking at, like, their scores and those types of things is that they were coming to school all the time, and the attendance increased astronomically. And so these are wonderful things to say that our kids are seeing themselves reflected in their learning. The community is seeing them, and they're having fun at school, um, and They're learning about the world around them in a really um, culturally rich and academic way. And so while I'm happy to keep going and talking about the successes we are seeing within this education system that is decolonized and founded within reconciliation, we are pushing up against the edges of the public funding model all the time. And so we are primarily funded through a negotiated transfer payment agreement as our other boards, and this is with the Yukon Territorial Government. Um, Even though some of our biggest successes, like the Dagu Tai and the literacy plan and the food sovereignty, um, although we've done those, we have been lucky, being a board, that we were able to rely on external funding and partnerships to reach the full potential. We wouldn't have been able to do it without that. And so the fact is, government needs an established proof of concept before its institutions will consider integrating this work into their core funding models. If we are hoping to change and decolonize the education system, we cannot wait for the pace of a colonial government to pay for it. We need access. We need to access other funding sources so that we can do this work in a good way, in the way that we know best, and the way that our learners and communities have proven works, before the government will adopt it. And so that is kind of our conundrum and what we're working towards. And we are energized and we are excited and we will fight for these learners and work hard for our communities. And so this is our current path. And this is the future path that we are um, bushwhacking through and cutting the buckbrush. And so I thank you so much for bearing witness to a little bit of our story. And in the words of the traditional territory that I'm on, the Liard First Nation, they say "Soga Sinla." Thank you very much.